Paranormal experiences usually happen in one place, but there are cases where different situations haunt a person. Or it could also be said that they are attracted to her, manifesting in ways that one is never prepared for. Today we have a rather curious case. I recommend you listen to the end and tell me in the comments what you think about everything that happened, and if something similar ever happened to you. Remember that you can send me your own experience to the WhatsApp number currently displayed on the screen. The number and duration of audios are irrelevant. You can add, if you want, photos and videos or anything you think is appropriate to make your story as complete as possible. I will review everything later, and if there are any doubts, I will be contacting you. Friends, now if not, we waste more time and start right now with this new paranormal story.
My name is Carolina. I live in Mendoza, and I would like to tell you 3 stories that happened to me. I'm going to tell them to you in chronological order. It's something that I haven't told almost anyone, very few people in my environment, because you know what happens when you tell these kinds of things? Many out there either laugh or don't give it importance, and for me it was something that marked me a lot.
This first story happened in Buenos Aires, year 2010. At that time I lived in the town of Azul with my children and my partner, in Mercedes. After some time to organize ourselves and define some basic issues, we decided to live all together, and that's when I ended up moving to Mercedes. My partner's house was in a very nice complex in the city, and where one would never expect to live an anomalous situation, but quite the opposite. But I would also like to point out that what happened did not feel inherent to the place, but something that happened there, as it could have happened anywhere else. Although the question is, for what purpose? We got along very well in cohabitation. Weeks and months passed, and only then did something strange happen. Something that to this day causes me fear, because I felt in real danger. We had dinner. It was a perfectly normal night. Nothing strange had happened, neither that day nor the previous ones. We went to bed, watched a bit of television, chatted. I stayed reading for a moment, and it was when I turned off the bedside lamp. When I get comfortable, close my eyes, turn to one side, I feel something behind me. I turn around and see, with a little light coming in through the window, a being standing at the door of the room. I couldn't make out any features or any particular detail, but without a doubt, it was the darkest and most terrifying shadow I've ever seen in my life. It corresponded in size and shape to a person, but with some differences, which, thinking about it later, with a somewhat cooler head, I associated more with a gray, as it is often called. I don't want to say aliens, because frankly we don't know where they come from or where they are. But their shape was very similar to those that are often represented in the testimonies of many people around the world. A very important detail is that I was able to move freely until I saw it once I located it with my eyes. My body was completely paralyzed. I could see, hear, think, smell, but my muscles did not move, not even to scream. I was leaning against the headboard of the bed. My partner was sleeping without realizing anything, while I was looking at this figure with tremendous fear.
When the only thing I could move were my eyes? And when I look around the room, why me? What I managed to do was elbow my partner to wake up and see what I was seeing, but I couldn't move. When I look around with my eyes, I roll them all over the place. I see that there was another being standing next to me, and he was leaning over with his face inches from mine. I mean, staring at me intently. No, I can't explain to you the terror, the panic that I felt at that moment. Tears were falling and I couldn't move. It was very ugly. It was horrible, horrible, because I felt as much fear as I had never felt in my life.
Whoever is listening to this will surely say that I suffered a sleep paralysis, where one usually sees figures, shadows, or even monsters that our own brain manufactures as a very realistic illusion. I have it clear. But the curious thing about the case was not being asleep. I was perfectly aware of everything, and only milliseconds before seeing this entity could I move. It was only when I came across its figure that every one of my muscles became paralyzed. And then, of course, when I saw this second being, I really thought I was going to die. At one point, I closed my eyes and did. So hard that I could scream, and my partner woke up. When I opened my eyes, feeling him hug me, asking what had happened, I could see that there was no one else in the room but the two of us. I told him in great detail everything that had happened, and he got up to check the house. We turned on the lights, the television checked everything 3 or 4 times, made sure the house was locked and that no one had entered. And after that night, beyond trying to find a way to take it in a more pleasant way, I couldn't, because as I told you before, there was no doubt about what had happened. I had been awake, conscious, and what I saw was exactly as I told you. And the fear was so great that the following nights it was terribly hard for me to sleep, to get used to the fact that I was safe within my own home. Because never until that night had I felt something bad or strange. From the first day, everything had been perfect. This second experience occurred in 2014. We had moved to another house, also in Mercedes, and in this case, it wasn't just me who saw all of this. My partner was traveling for work and I stayed at home, but logically accompanied by one of my children, the youngest, the teenager. Something common, that is, I was used to all of this. One of those nights we had dinner, watched a comedy movie. I don't remember the name at this moment. We went to bed and something happened that impressed me more than ever. And I say this because in that house we were already feeling strange things even though it was very nice. From the first days we noticed that we used to hear noises without any sense, and at some point we naturalized them as if they were inherent to the house. A very wrong decision. Going back to that night, I first heard a noise that I didn't understand and then something louder. They were moving the kitchen chairs, not one, but several, from what could be heard. The first thing I thought, because it was something very different from what we were used to, was that my son had gotten up and for some reason was moving the chairs. So to make sure everything was okay, I got up and went to check. But it was impressive and quite shocking that when I went out and was in the very hall that distributed the rooms, I ran into my son. I asked him what was going on, and he, with a look of tremendous fear, told me he didn't know, because in the kitchen, as far as he knew, there was no one. He got up precisely because he heard the same thing I did and didn't know directly what to do. We stayed in the hallway still hearing the noises of the chairs, how they moved from one side to the other. It was something impressive. And before we continue, I want to highlight that neither of us thought of anything paranormal. We imagined at all times and with a lot of fear that thieves had gotten in somewhere and were ransacking the whole house. Just like that, all these noises calmed down, and that's when I gathered the courage to check what was going on. My son was coming with me by my side. He was practically of age, so more than me, protecting him was the opposite. We were frozen when we found ourselves standing in the kitchen, in front of all the chairs, in perfect order. There was absolutely nothing out of place. The doors and windows were also closed, obviously. And then, what was it that we heard? We ask ourselves that question to this day.
And on another occasion as well, we heard. The same situation also happened, both of us coming out of the room, because we both had heard that they were throwing cutlery into the kitchen sink. So, we go more scared because there were already several times that we had heard noise, but this time the noise was very loud. We both go to the kitchen and there was nothing. I never leave dishes to wash. There was nothing on the countertop. Impossible that they have thrown cutlery inside the sink. In that same house. I'm not sure if it was the same month or the following month. One day I was washing the dishes, and out of the corner of my eye I see a man peeking out from the hallway. But he peeked out very quickly. He peeked out and returned at this speed that I told you. He peeked out and returned. He was wearing dark pants, a light blue shirt I remember, and had dark hair. I don't remember anything else, but I saw him clearly, but out of the corner of my eye. I didn't see many details, just the colors, but I clearly saw it was a man. I walked down the hallway very slowly and there was no one in the house. I went through the whole house and there was no one.
One in that same house, and we all experienced this. It was seeing in the glass of the windows being inside, the reflection of other people or shadows inside the house. It was impressive, and we got to the point of always keeping the curtains closed to prevent this from happening. Because many times it left us not only surprised, it left us terrified.
Something was happening in that house. Something was in that house. I could never know what because soon we moved to another house with more light and everything. But that house was very gloomy, horrible. And the third story I'm going to tell you happened to me here in Mendoza when I first came to Mendoza. I moved into a house, and it was a house of a friend couple where she had divorced and had the house in common with her ex-husband. That house belonged to both of them. Her ex-husband had stayed living in that house. She already had another partner and everything, but he had stayed in that house. Well, and it turns out that he passes away. So she, for economic reasons, had to rent the house. Immediately, well, it turns out that she asked me since I was looking for a house if I wanted to rent her house. Yes, why wouldn't I? I rented it from her. She left me the house at a good price. Well, it came in handy, but in a very nice area. Well, it turns out that several things had to be removed from the house. So, well, I offered with my partner. I tell her, leave it, I'll take it out clean, the house and everything. Because she didn't dare, because there were many mixed feelings there. She had lived many years in the house. And well, I told her, leave it, stay calm, that my partner and I will take everything out. We clean the house and I bring my things and I already occupy it.
Within a few weeks, we moved and started a new stage of our life in this house. One detail to mention is that for some reason I didn't dare to use the master bedroom, because that's exactly where this man had died. So we settled in another one of the bedrooms in the house. And I want to make it clear that this man was a person very loved by everyone, even by the neighbors. He was never a person who got into trouble, confrontational, quite the opposite. And I also tell you that he died of cancer. It wasn't exactly that his death occurred in some traumatic way, was it? That is to say, everything seemed to indicate that there was no reason to worry. And if we start to think seriously, people die all the time. It's the natural cycle. But even so, it made an impression on me. It wasn't fear, it was impression. But this house had surprises for us. Weeks after we moved, something incredible happened to me. We were sleeping and I woke up in the middle of the night to something that left me frozen. I feel a person. Some hands grabbing my right ankle quite strongly. When I sit up, I immediately see this man who was the owner of the house, sitting at the foot of the bed, still grabbing my ankle very, very tightly and staring into my eyes fixedly with a very strange expression. He had a mix of sadness and at the same time curiosity or fear. I realized at that moment, and I don't know why, that with his gaze he was asking me, he was demanding what we were doing in his house. Although I was surprised and scared, it was nothing compared to what I told you at the beginning of this story. What happened to me at Mercedes' house. This was very different, because more than evil, I felt sadness in this man or in his appearance. I turned on the light and at that moment he disappeared. It was quite hard for me to sleep, obviously, but I was able to do it and I didn't feel it again. The issue was that after that night, a lot of things started happening in the house. For example, things would fall for no reason, doors would open or close, lights would turn on by themselves. It was normal to wake up in the middle of the night and find the bathroom or kitchen light on, even though we had turned them off before going to bed. The faucets, for example, would also turn on by themselves. It was practically an everyday thing. The thing was that after a few months we finally decided to occupy the master bedroom. It was much larger, more comfortable, brighter. So we took care of fixing it up, painting it, changing the lights, in short, making it nicer and renovating it as much as possible. That way we were going to feel more comfortable and more at ease. And something else happened that first night.
The first night we slept in that room, When I turn off the bedside lamp to sleep, I see this man standing at the door of the room, also with the same expression because they are in my house. That's what he conveyed to me. It was anguish, sadness. In fact, I couldn't enter his room because I would start crying. That's why my husband chose to go in. He took care of removing the things, painting, and doing everything inside that room because I felt so much anguish when I entered that room that I couldn't stop crying. Sorry, I'm telling you this. And I get the same feeling of wanting to cry now. I never knew him, but when he appeared to me like that, I knew it was him without knowing him because I didn't even know what he looked like. Many advised me to light a candle, a white candle, and tell him to go in peace, that everything was fine. Well, that's what I did, and at one point my husband and I looked at each other over time and we said, "Did you realize he's no longer in the house?" "Yes," he tells me, "I felt it too. You can no longer feel his presence in the house." And once I had a little bed that I used as a small couch in one of the rooms that no one used. I would finish stretching out the little blanket that I put on that bed. I would finish stretching it out. Will I go clean? The bathroom was just in my cleaning chores. When I passed by that room again, there was the mark of someone who had sat in that room, on that bed. The mark on the blanket that I had just finished stretching, and I knew it was perfectly smooth because I'm really hysterical about that. So you say, who sat down? If I'm alone cleaning. My husband was working. It was him, he was around. This was before having that feeling that he was no longer there. And another thing I forget to tell you, in that house of Mercedes, which I tell you was very dark. One day I had a sleep paralysis, very ugly, very ugly. I had finished cleaning the house while my partner was working. We had a business at that time. I had finished cleaning the house. And I lay down on the bed for a bit, just a bit, because it was only half an hour that I had. I say I'm going to stretch my legs a little. I lie down on the bed on my stomach. I fall asleep. I estimate that I fell asleep and I wake up with the feeling that someone was grabbing my ankles and shaking my legs in a wavy manner. But the feeling was so ugly because I opened my eyes. I woke up because of that same sensation. But it wouldn't stop. It just wouldn't stop. That feeling that they were grabbing my legs, I kept feeling it. So I turned around to see if someone was really grabbing my legs. And no, there was no one. I mean, okay, I had a sleep paralysis. I tried to go back to sleep and it happens again. That feeling that they were grabbing my legs and shaking me all over. When I opened my eyes, the bed was moving. So then I got up. I didn't want to lie down anymore. I got up very scared. I checked the whole house too, but no, there was no one. But the bed was moving. I mean, it wasn't just my feeling, it was really happening.
Thanks for watching. Please share your thoughts in the comments. I say goodbye until the next chapter, and now I send a big hug to everyone.